Hello, my name is Mortarim and today I will share with you my Weapon Master Battle Mage build guide. This bad boy utilizes 2 Nippon blades, 1 Nippon spear and 1 magic stick to unleash the full power of God and anime on your foes, destroying bosses, staggering dragons, freezing groups of enemies and bonking invading foes in PvP are just a few things this build excels at. Speaking of PvP, this build is amazing at it and crushes everything with ease. Well, mostly. For this build we are going to utilize a lot of tools, be it weapons, ashes of war or spells. Everything goes. Our 4 weapons of choice are going to be a magic infused cross Naginata with hoarfrost stomp ashes of war, a moonveil katana, a magic infused uchiganata or nagakiba, and a meteorite staff. First, let's talk about the katana selection. Moonveil's skill is transient moonlight. We assume a sheathed Iaido style stance when using the weapon skill, and we can release it for a feint, or use the light attack for a fast horizontal slash that releases an arc magic projectile, or use a heavy attack to do the same just vertically. Hitting an enemy with the blade and projectile leads to much more damage and poise damage, especially with the heavy attack. We combine this with a magic infused uchiganata or nagakiba in our offhand. Now, which one is better? Then nagakiba, of course. Why? Because it offers higher range and better dexterity scaling, so a little bit more damage. Now, when we equip a katana in our main hand and offhand, we can power stance with devastating attacks, but we can also use fast light attacks with our moonveil katana in our main hand. We're still having access to transient moonlight. The normal dual wielding attacks consume a lot of stamina, so we won't use them all that much, but we still get access to 3 extremely strong attacks. The running attacks come out really fast, without any delay while still moving you forward. The crouching attacks strikes in a wide arc with both weapons, dealing devastating AoE damage. And the jumping attack deals insane damage while staggering most enemies to enable follow-up attacks. It also deals a lot of poise damage. We complement this with fast light attacks with our moonveil katana in our main hand. Now, what about more range? No problem here. For this we have our magic infused cross Naginata with hoarfrost stomp. The running and crouch attack for this weapon are both thrust attacks. Those are much more useful and deadly than the normal light attack chains. It offers us the range we are lacking with our other weapons. Now, what about long range AoE attacks? For this we have hoarfrost stomp. It covers a wide area and deals insane damage while inflicting frostbite. It can even stagger some enemies. This skill costs nearly no FP, zones enemies and can be chained. It's absolutely broken and melts bosses and players alike. Well, freezes them. But we are not done. We have physical, magic and frost damage. But all our weapons also inflict bleed damage. And bleed and frost damage both inflict damage based on our target's maximum health. So magic resistant foes are no problem. Now, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to add another tool to your arsenal. Me. What about magic? Sorceries in this game offers a huge amount of tools, and most are very good, especially in PvP, but given the limited amount of FP we are only able to utilize a few effectively with this build. Namely Rock Sling, Swift Glintstone Shard, Magic Glintblade, Gavel of Heimer, Carian Phalanx, Carian Piercer and Loretta's Greatbow. Carian Retaliation is also great defensive options versus spells, especially in PvP. Now, Rock Sling deals a lot of physical damage and heavy poise damage, offering us a non-magic range option. Swift Glintstone Shard is a better pebble for this build. It's great for poking and finishing enemies, punishing healing in PvP and to put pressure on foes. You can also weave it in between attacks, especially when combining with hoarfrost stomp. Magic Glintblade offers us a lot of range and the delayed release can also apply pressure before the fight even starts, without any additional stamina cost. It has a decent FP to damage ratio, so this one is our go-to damage spell. Gavel of Heimer is an amazing looking spell and it feels great to use. It has ultra great sword hyper armor and has extended stagger capabilities similar to that of a great hammer. But it also has a long cast animation and a high FP cost. It is great for PvP, but for PvE I think it's not the best option. Carian Phalanx gives us a very versatile tool. Casting it can prevent enemies from engaging you while you heal. It can also further apply pressure when attacking and it staggers enemies even with just one projectile. This opens up foes for strong attacks and especially our power stancing. Carian Piercer is a strong long-range magic attack that deals a good chunk of damage. Its recovery animation is a bit lengthy though, and you can get punished for using it, especially in PvP. Loretta's great bow costs a lot of FP, but it also offers us incredible range, AoE and damage for its price. But we can further boost our damage output. We can use a light dagger with Ash of War Determination to boost one attack. This attack will deal around 40% more damage for 10 FP. It is especially useful for high cost spells like Gavel of Hammer, Loretta's Great Bow or Carian Piercer. Now let's talk about possible talismans. We need as much endurance and equipment load as possible, because we are equipping a lot of weapons and we want to use heavy armor. Any variation of the arsenal talisman and the Earth Tree's Favor are mandatory, for you can use a Radagon Scar Seal to boost your endurance. The increased damage taken is just 5% and the additional stats are more than worth it, especially early on. The Carian Filigree Crest is also a very strong option since we are using a lot of weapon skills. This will decrease our FP usage with Transient Moonlight, hoarfrost, Stomp and Determination by around 20 to 25%, and another great option is the Radagon Icon for a 15% decrease in cast time. As far as armor goes, we want as much mitigation as possible, since we are melee oriented. The best early option is the Carian Knight set, but given the steep requirements for equipment load, I would recommend mixing up some stuff. Personally, I'm running a Lionel's Helm, Fire Prelate Armor Altered, a Radagon's Gauntlets and Traveler's Slops for the ultimate drip. Now I could run something else to boost my stats, but given the low amount of damage we get per point, I wouldn't recommend it. Now before I dive into gameplay tips, we need to talk about the rather hefty attribute requirements for this build. This build is a close combat specialist with high stamina and equipment load demands, while still needing a good chunk of intelligence. Pumping up your mind to get to 90 or even 100 FP is also not a bad idea. Given all that and the weapon requirements, I would recommend looking into Scar Seals early on to boost our stats for a small increase in damage taken. Just our weapons need 23 intelligence, 20 dexterity and 16 strength. Vigor should also not be neglected, with 20 early, 30 around Lucaria and 40 around Radan. 30 endurance is also a necessity to be able to equip good armor and not run out of stamina. Everything else should go into vigor and intelligence to unlock more spells and more damage. Now what about summons? I'd recommend the Jellyfish early on, the Kaiden Sellsword a bit later and the Mimic Tear Ashes as soon as you get them. There are many other good summons, but I have not explored them, so I cannot really recommend them. Now for some gameplay tips. Given the massive arsenal of weapons and spells we have at our disposal, we are not limited by strict playstyles. We are very versatile. Some bosses require aggressive plays and some are better thought with much more nuance. Though I can give you some rules you can follow. Slow and chunky enemies are prone to hoarfrost stomp chains and power stancing attacks. For example, dragons, golems, chunky boys and shield wielding foes. Groups of enemies get annihilated by hoarfrost. Slow walking zombies and any jumping or slow dodging foes will get hit. Faster enemies can either be power stance with crouch or jumping attacks. Running attacks can also be useful versus some bosses, but Transient Moonlight obliterates them. Very aggressive enemies and bosses usually do not fare well against this weapon art. Hitting them with just a few results in a guard break, especially when you get to hit them with the blade and projectile. This opens them up for a free jumping attack as well as a critical strike. Flying enemies also get destroyed with heavy versions of the Transient Moonlight. But for those we also have our range attacks with magic. Enemies resistant versus magic can be punished heavily with Rock Sling and subsequent power stand attacks to trigger bleeds. Initiating fights with glintstone blade Qs will help you get in some damage early on and doesn't cost any stamina since we are not in combat yet. Fighting in tight corridors is where the katanas shine. Because of the small blade size, we are not punished by hitting walls and are not stopped from dealing damage. We can, however, also use our Naginata's crouch attacks to gain access to long-range piercing attacks. And lastly, applying frostbite on enemies with hoarfrost stomp and switching to our trusty Moonveil katana is a great way to slow down some foes for your Nippon blade strikes. Finishing enemies off with our fast light attacks and moonlight strikes can win you battles close to death. Now that's all I have for you for now. If you have any questions or remarks, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments. You can find a list of weapons and spells in the description box with additional information on where to find them. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I thank everyone for their generous donation. See you next time and bye!